Step into the silent stone corridors of Angkor Wat, far from the light of the sun, where the air is cool and heavy with the weight of centuries. Find your way to a small, unassuming chamber in the uppermost gallery, a place known to the guides as the Echo Chamber. Here, within these walls of perfectly fitted sandstone, an acoustic impossibility awaits. Stand in the precise center, take a slow, deliberate breath, and gently thump your chest with a closed fist. The sound that returns is not the flat, dull thud you would expect. It is not a simple echo. Instead, the chamber itself seems to come alive. A deep, resonant boom, rich and profound, washes over you, vibrating through the very stone beneath your feet. It is a sound that feels ancient, a sound that feels engineered, a sound that feels utterly impossible. How? How did an ancient civilization, supposedly equipped with nothing more than bronze chisels and raw manpower, engineer a chamber with acoustic properties so precise they defy our modern understanding? There are no visible markings, no special materials, only stone. Yet, this room acts as a perfectly tuned resonant frequency amplifier, responding to a specific percussive input to create a sound that mimics a drumbeat from the heart of the temple itself. Was this a chamber for sacred rituals, where the heartbeat of a king or a high priest could be amplified to fill the heavens? Was it a technological device, a key to unlocking some other function of this vast stone complex? Or is it simply a fluke, an accidental miracle of construction? To accept it as an accident is to accept that lightning can strike a pile of sand and forge a perfect crystal goblet. The precision is too deliberate, the effect too specific. This acoustic anomaly is not an isolated riddle buried in the heart of the Cambodian jungle. It is merely the first note in a symphony of the impossible, a symphony etched in stone across hundreds of square kilometers, a composition that challenges the very foundations of what we believe we know about our own past. Journey with us, just a few kilometers away, deep into the sprawling, root-choked ruins of Tar Prom, a temple famously left to the embrace of the jungle. Here, amongst carvings of celestial dancers, mythical beasts, and devout figures, lies a small, unassuming bas-relief that should not exist. Carved with the same skill and weathering as all the other 800-year-old works around it, is a creature that modern man only began to piece together from fossilized bones in the 19th century. The depiction is unmistakable. A creature with a row of large, bony plates running along its spine and a spiked tail. It is, for all intents and purposes, a stegosaurus. Official history tells us that dinosaurs went extinct approximately 65 million years before the first humans even began to walk the earth. Paleontology, as a science, is only a few centuries old. Yet here, carved into 12th century temple stone, is a clear and anatomically detailed depiction of a specific species of dinosaur. The official explanations offered by mainstream archaeology are varied and, for many, deeply unsatisfying. Some suggest it is a rhinoceros, seen from an odd angle, with background foliage mistaken for plates. But the carving is clear, the plates are distinct, the form is reptilian. Others propose it is a mythical creature, a beast from Khmer folklore. Yet, it bears no resemblance to the Nagas, the Garudas, or any other known figure from their extensive mythological pantheon. It resembles one thing, and one thing only. A creature that, according to our own science, no human being had ever seen. One of these timelines is wrong. Either our understanding of prehistory is flawed, and creatures like this survived into the age of man, or the builders of this temple possessed knowledge they simply should not have had. And the Stegosaurus carving is not alone. It is but one of many such out-of-place artifacts, or ooparts, scattered throughout the Angkorian landscape. Look closely at a battle scene carved at Angkor Wat itself. Amongst the warriors and gods, a figure can be seen holding a peculiar object to his eye, pointing it towards the heavens. The object is cylindrical, seemingly composed of multiple sections that slide into one another. It is being used to observe a celestial event, It is, by any functional description, a telescope. The telescope, however, was not invented until the early 17th century in the Netherlands, a full 500 years after this carving was supposedly made. How can we explain this? Was it a product of pure imagination that just happened to perfectly predict a future invention? Or are these carvings evidence of a lost technology, a forgotten chapter of human history, where our ancestors possessed knowledge that has since been lost to time and catastrophe? It is easy to feel lost amidst these cascading enigmas, to feel the foundations of accepted history begin to tremble. The sheer weight of the impossible evidence can be overwhelming, leaving us with more questions than answers. And it is here, at this intersection of wonder and doubt, that we welcome you. We are Primordial Cosmos, and we journey into these forgotten histories, seeking the echoes of truths long buried. Our mission is to explore these deep mysteries, to question the comfortable narratives, and to present the evidence that lies hidden in plain sight. If you, like us, feel compelled to question, to explore the spaces between the lines of our official past, then consider joining our expedition. By subscribing to our channel and activating the notification bell, you ensure that you will not miss a single discovery, a single piece of the puzzle, as we attempt to assemble it together. Your support allows us to continue this quest for knowledge, wherever it may lead. Become part of a community that dares to look deeper, for the puzzle of Angkor is far grander than even these initial pieces suggest. Beyond the acoustics and the anachronistic carvings lies perhaps the most profound mystery of all. The mystery of its very creation, marked not by evidence, but by a staggering and complete lack of it. Consider the scale of what was accomplished here. Angkor Wat alone is a monument constructed from an estimated 5 to 10 million tons of sandstone. Each block was quarried from the holy mountain of Phnom Kulen, more than 50 kilometers away. They were then transported, likely by a complex system of canals and rafts, shaped with incredible precision, and lifted into place to create a structure covering over 162 hectares. The logistics of such an undertaking are mind-boggling even by today's standards. It would have required a massive, coordinated workforce of tens, perhaps hundreds of thousands of laborers, craftsmen, and engineers, working continuously for decades. The official timeline suggests the entire temple was completed in just 37 years under the reign of King Suryavarman II. An operation of this magnitude, a project that would rival the construction of the Great Pyramids of Egypt, would, by necessity, generate a mountain of documentation. Think of what would be required. Architectural plans, engineering schematics, detailed lists of worker assignments, records of food and supply distribution, administrative ledgers tracking progress, and royal decrees commissioning the work. We have found such records for other, lesser projects from other ancient cultures. The Romans left behind detailed accounts of their aqueducts and roads. Even the Egyptians left behind papyri detailing aspects of pyramid construction, such as the famous Diary of Mira, which describes the transportation of limestone blocks. For Angkor Wat, the largest religious monument on planet Earth, we have nothing. Not a single blueprint has ever been found, not one detailed schematic, not one administrative ledger detailing the logistics of this monumental task. There are no quarry records detailing the extraction of 10 million tons of stone. There are no contemporary chronicles from the Khmer Empire itself that describe, in any practical detail, how they built their most magnificent temple. The life's work of an entire generation of people, culminating in one of humanity's greatest architectural achievements, is accompanied by a deafening, absolute silence. This is not normal. This is a historical anomaly of the highest order. It is a silence so complete, so absolute, that it feels less like an accident of history and more like a deliberate erasure. Or perhaps the records never existed in the first place, because the story we have been told about its creation is not the true story at all. Perhaps the Khmer people, under their great king, did not build this place from the ground up. Perhaps they were the inheritors of something much older, a legacy of stone left behind by a civilization that vanished long before, leaving behind only these silent, impossible structures as the sole testament to their existence. This single possibility, this radical idea, forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about Angkor, and to ask the most important question of all: if the Khmer did not build it, then who did? To truly comprehend the architects of Angkor, we must abandon the search for a language written in alphabets and scripts. Their message was not carved into a stele for historians to translate. It was encoded into the very fabric of the universe they replicated on Earth. They spoke a language that transcends culture and time, a language of pure mathematics, sacred geometry, and celestial mechanics. To understand the architect, we must first learn to read their blueprints, which are written not on paper, but across the landscape itself, in the silent, eternal language of stone. The story of Angkor is not a history of kings and battles. It is a masterclass in cosmic design. The journey into this design begins with a single, foundational question: how did they measure their world? Every great construction project in history, from the humblest dwelling to the grandest cathedral, is built upon a fundamental unit of measurement. The Romans had their pace, the Egyptians their royal cubit. The builders of Angkor also had a unit, but to understand its origin is to take a step into a worldview so vast it measured time in eons. In ancient Vedic cosmology, from which the Hinduism of Angkor draws its roots, time is not linear but cyclical, unfolding in great ages called yugas. The shortest and most degraded of these ages, our current era, is the Kali Yuga, an age lasting precisely 432,000 years. This number 432,000 is not arbitrary. It is considered a fundamental frequency of the cosmos, a number that echoes in both the celestial and the terrestrial. Consider the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of the Earth on its axis that causes the constellations to drift across the sky over a period of approximately 25,920 years. Divide this great year by 60, a primary number in ancient sexagesimal mathematics, and you arrive at 432. Consider the diameter of the Sun, which is approximately 864,000 miles, or 2 times 432,000. The diameter of the Moon is approximately 2,160 miles. Divide 432,000 by 200, and the result is 2,160. These are not coincidences. They are the harmonic ratios of our solar system, a mathematical resonance that the ancients seemingly understood with profound clarity. This cosmic number, 432,000, is the key that unlocks the architectural enigma of Angkor Wat. Archaeologists have determined that the builders used a unit of measurement, a Khmer cubit or hat, equivalent to roughly 0.435 meters. While this seems mundane on the surface, its application reveals the cosmic code at play. The grand causeway that leads to the western entrance of the temple is 1,944 cubits long. Divide that number by 4.5, and you arrive at 432. The length of the main temple axis, from the first step to the very rear of the complex, measures precisely 3,888 cubits. Divide this by 9, and the result is 432. The very dimensions of the temple are a physical manifestation of the great cycles of cosmic time. They did not simply build a temple, they built a stone calculator for the ages of the universe, a structure whose every proportion sings the song of the stars. From this foundational number, a more complex picture emerges, the blueprint of heaven itself. The structure of Angkor Wat is a perfect physical mandala, a three-dimensional map of the Hindu-Buddhist cosmos. The 5 main towers, the feature that gives the temple its iconic silhouette, are a representation of the 5 peaks of Mount Meru, the mythical abode of the gods and the central axis of the universe. The vast, surrounding moat, a perfect rectangle measuring over 5 kilometers in circumference, is not merely a defensive feature. It symbolizes the cosmic ocean, the primordial waters from which all of creation emerged. To walk the Great Causeway, crossing this ocean and ascending the galleries towards the central tower, was not simply a physical journey. It was a spiritual pilgrimage, a symbolic ascent from the profane world into the realm of the divine. This cosmic map is rendered with a geometric precision that is nothing short of breathtaking. The entire complex is laid out on a perfectly oriented east-west axis. The nested rectangular galleries create a pattern of sublime harmony, with proportions that appear to reflect universal mathematical constants. Researchers have demonstrated that the relationships between the lengths of the galleries, the heights of the towers, and the dimensions of the courtyards consistently approximate the golden ratio, phi, the same irrational number that governs the growth of spiral galaxies, seashells, and the proportions of the human body. It is the fingerprint of the Creator, a mathematical signature of intelligent design, found here, encoded into millions of tons of sandstone. They built a temple where the laws of God and the laws of mathematics were one and the same. The structure is both a house of worship and a mathematical proof, a testament to a civilization that saw the divine in the elegant logic of geometry. And if the numbers are the language and the geometry is the grammar, then the purpose of the message is astronomy. Angkor is not merely a static map of a mythical cosmos. It is a functioning, dynamic, astronomical observatory, a clockwork of stone and light. The most famous and undeniable proof of this is the equinox alignment. Twice a year, on the spring and autumn equinoxes, a viewer standing at the beginning of the Western Causeway will witness the sun rise directly over the pinnacle of the central tower of Angkor Wat. The alignment is perfect. For a civilization to achieve this, they would require not only a sophisticated understanding of the sun's annual path, but also advanced surveying and engineering skills to orient a structure of such immense scale with absolute precision. The entire temple is a solar instrument, designed to mark the turning points of the year, the sacred moments of balance between light and darkness. But this solar alignment, as spectacular as it is only the beginning. It is the most obvious function of a far more complex celestial machine. When we zoom out from Angkor Wat itself and look at the wider Angkorian landscape, a much older and more profound pattern emerges. For decades, scholars have been puzzled by the seemingly random placement of the major temples and structures built over centuries. But what if the placement was not random at all? What if the entire landscape was the canvas for a much larger blueprint? When the major temples of the Angkor region are plotted on a map, and that map is superimposed over the night sky, a stunning correlation appears. The layout of the temples on the ground appears to be a mirror image of the stars in the constellation of Draco, the celestial dragon. This theory, much like the famous Orion correlation theory for the Giza pyramids, suggests that the builders were engaged in a monumental project of creating a heaven on earth, of fixing the image of the stars into the terrestrial landscape. But here lies the truly staggering implication. The celestial alignment is not with the sky of the 12th century, when the temples were supposedly built. Due to the precession of the equinoxes, the positions of the stars slowly shift over millennia. The map on the ground at Angkor only perfectly aligns with the constellation Draco as it appeared in the sky around the year 10,500 before Christ. Let us pause to consider what this means. It suggests that the plan for Angkor, the celestial blueprint for this vast complex, originated more than 11,000 years before the temples were actually constructed. It implies that the Khmer civilization, for all its own greatness, may have been working from a master plan handed down through ages, a sacred inheritance from a far more ancient, lost civilization. It would mean that King Suryavarman II did not commission a new design, but initiated the most glorious phase of a project that was already millennia old. They were not the original architects, they were the faithful restorers, the inheritors of a sacred duty to complete a terrestrial mirror of the heavens that had been conceived in a forgotten epoch. We are no longer looking at a temple. We are looking at a message across time, an astronomical and mathematical legacy of staggering complexity. The numbers encoded the cycles of the universe. The geometry mapped the structure of the cosmos, and the alignments fixed a specific moment in celestial time, a moment in the distant past, as being of supreme importance. The isolated anomalies of impossible carvings and acoustic chambers that we first encountered now fall into place. They are not random curiosities. They are the details within a grand, unified, and hyper-intelligent design. They are the footnotes to a cosmic text written in stone. We have decoded the language and seen the blueprint. We now understand that the builders, whoever they were, possessed a knowledge of mathematics and astronomy that was not just advanced for their time, but that would rival our own. This realization brings us to a new, and perhaps more daunting, precipice of understanding. The question is no longer simply, who built this? We now know something of their minds, their staggering intellect, their cosmic worldview. The new question, the one that echoes from these celestial alignments and mathematical constants, is far more profound. As this ancient clockwork of stone marks a precise sunrise in Cambodia, connecting this one point on Earth to the cosmos, it's a powerful reminder of time and space. This story is reaching you through our modern networks, connecting all of us in a shared moment of inquiry. We're fascinated to think of this community, scattered across the planet, all contemplating the same mystery at once. What time is it in your part of the world as you hear these words? Is the sun just rising? Is it high in the sky? Or have the stars begun to appear? Let us know in the comments from which corner of this earth you are joining us on this journey. Now, let us ask together, why? What was the ultimate purpose of this great work? Why create a terrestrial mirror of the heavens and encode it with the fundamental numbers of time and space? What message were they trying to preserve? And for whom was it intended? To accept the official history of Angkor Wat is to embrace a story of unparalleled human achievement. It is a tale of a god-king, a mighty empire, and a devotion so profound it moved mountains of stone. The story begins, we are told, in the early 12th century with the ascension of a king named Suryavarman II. He was a formidable ruler, a military leader who unified a fractured kingdom and expanded the Khmer Empire to its zenith, its influence stretching across much of Southeast Asia. He was also, in his own eyes and the eyes of his people, a living god, an incarnation of Vishnu on earth. And like the pharaohs of Egypt, he sought to create a monument that would not only honor his patron deity, but also ensure his own immortality by merging his essence with the divine after his death. That monument was Angkor Wat. The official narrative posits that this was his life's great work, a temple mountain built as a microcosm of the Hindu universe, a terrestrial abode for the gods. The evidence for this narrative seems, at first glance, to be carved directly into the stone. Within the southern gallery, there is a famous and extensive bas-relief, a vast historical mural depicting a royal procession. At its center sits a commanding figure, larger than the others, identified by inscription as King Suryavarman II. To historians, this is the cornerstone of their theory, the equivalent of a signed masterpiece. The king is depicted in his temple. Therefore, the temple must be his creation. This conclusion has been the bedrock of Angkorian studies for the better part of a century, the simple, elegant solution to the question of who built Angkor Wat. Furthermore, modern science in recent decades has seemingly bolstered this official account. For many years, the sheer logistical challenge of transporting millions of tons of stone from the quarries at Mount Kulin, some 50 kilometers away, was a major point of contention. But extensive satellite imaging and archaeological surveys have revealed a sophisticated network of canals, a system of ancient highways for water that connected the quarry directly to the construction site. This discovery demonstrated that the Khmer were master hydraulic engineers, capable of devising an efficient, large-scale transportation system that would have dramatically reduced the time and labor required for the project. The canals made the impossible seem possible, and the case for the Khmer as the builders appeared stronger than ever. The story was complete: a powerful king, a religious motive, a capable empire, and the logistical means to achieve the sublime. It is a compelling narrative, but it is a narrative that begins to unravel under the weight of its own contradictions. The first thread we must pull is the stone itself. Look at the masonry of the original structures of Angkor Wat. The sandstone blocks are fitted together with a precision that is often described as superhuman. There is no mortar. The stones are held together by their own weight and the perfection of their joinery. The seams between blocks, each weighing several tons, are often so fine that it is impossible to insert even a razor blade between them. Now, compare this work to the structures built by later Khmer kings, such as Jayavarman VII, a ruler who presided over a massive construction boom just a few generations later. His temples, including the famous Bayon within the city of Angkor Thom, are artistically breathtaking in their own right, but the quality of the construction is vastly inferior. The stonework is rougher, the joinery is less precise, and the structures themselves have proven far less durable over the centuries, with many falling into a state of considerable ruin. This presents a profound technological paradox. How does a civilization lose engineering knowledge of this caliber in such a short period of time? Great construction techniques are typically passed down, refined, and evolved over centuries. They do not simply vanish. The stark difference in quality between the 12th century Angkor Wat and the later temples feels less like an evolution and more like the difference between an original masterpiece and a later, less skilled attempt to copy it. It suggests that the builders of Angkor Wat possessed a level of mastery that their successors, for all their ambition, simply could not replicate. They were trying to play music on an instrument they no longer fully understood. The second thread is the economy. Building a monument on the scale of Angkor Wat is not merely an act of faith, it is an act of immense economic and political power. The official narrative presents the reign of Suryavarman II as a golden age of stability and strength. The historical record, however, paints a more complicated picture. This period was also marked by a series of massive, costly, and ultimately unsuccessful military invasions against the neighboring kingdom of Dai Viet. These were not minor border skirmishes. They were major campaigns that would have drained the empire's treasury and manpower. To launch the most ambitious and expensive construction project in the nation's history, while simultaneously waging a draining war on a foreign front, is a decision that borders on economic insanity. To put this into perspective, let us consider other great wonders of the world. The construction of China's Forbidden City, a complex less than half the area of Angkor Wat, required the labor of 1 million workers and 100,000 artisans over a 14-year period. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Vietnamese Emperor Khai Dinh, in order to fund the construction of his own comparatively tiny tomb, was forced to raise taxes across the country by 30%, causing widespread resentment. Angkor Wat is exponentially larger and more complex than either of these. Where did a kingdom, already strained by war, find the resources? Where did they find the surplus labor, the food to feed the workers, the political stability to see such a project through? The economic model required by the official story simply does not align with the historical reality of the period. The numbers do not add up. The empire, it seems, lacked both the peace and the prosperity required for such a monumental undertaking. The third and most critical thread that unravels the official story is the one we have already touched upon: the profound and unsettling silence of the historical record. Let us return to that key piece of evidence, the bas-relief of King Suryavarman II. It is presented as the creator's signature. But is it? Observe it not as a historian, but as an investigator. The carving is just one of many in a long gallery of murals. It is not in a primary position of dedication. There is no grand inscription proclaiming his role as the architect of the heavens on earth. Compared to the mind-bending complexity and artistic sublimity of the temple itself, the relief is remarkably simple, almost an afterthought. Why would the creator of the world's most magnificent structure be memorialized in such a humble, almost perfunctory fashion? It feels disproportionate. It feels wrong. Now, consider an alternative interpretation of that same piece of evidence. Great rulers throughout history have long sought to legitimize their power by associating themselves with places of pre-existing sanctity and power. Roman emperors built their palaces on the hills of ancient kings. Christian churches were constructed on the sites of pagan temples. What if the carving of Suryavarman II is not a signature of creation, but a stamp of ownership? What if it does not say, "I built this," but rather, "I rule from this sacred place"? What if the Khmer, arriving in this region, discovered the ruins of a complex so ancient and magnificent that they could only conclude it was built by the gods themselves? It would be natural for their most powerful king to claim it as the center of his new empire, to add his own mark to its sacred walls, and to build his own, lesser structures in its shadow. This single shift in perspective resolves all the contradictions. It explains the sudden appearance of impossibly advanced construction techniques, followed by their equally sudden decline. It explains how a kingdom under economic and military strain could possess such a magnificent centerpiece because they did not build it, they inherited it, and it explains the silence. The Khmer left no records of how Angkor Wat was built because they did not know. The knowledge belonged to a time long before their own. The official narrative, while neat and convenient, is a fragile construction. It is a story that stands upon a foundation of questionable evidence and is surrounded by a moat of deep, unanswered questions. The physical, economic, and historical evidence, when viewed without prejudice, does not point to the Khmer of the 12th century as the sole architects of Angkor. Instead, it points to them as the last in a long line of occupants, a great civilization that had the good fortune to inherit a divine legacy. The case is circumstantial, but it is overwhelming. The story of King Suryavarman II is not the story of Angkor's beginning. It is the story of one of its final chapters. To find the true architects, we must therefore close the book on the Khmer Empire and turn our investigation back, far back, into the deep, unwritten abyss of prehistoric time. To find the builders of Angkor, we must drain the oceans of time. We must search for the echoes of a world that has vanished from our maps, a civilization whose story is not written in history books, but in the geology of our planet and the oldest, most persistent myths of humanity. The clues are not found in royal decrees, but in the very landscape itself, a landscape that, until very recently, kept its greatest secrets hidden beneath a nearly impenetrable canopy of jungle. For decades, our understanding of Angkor was limited to the monumental stone temples that rose above the trees. But what lay between them, buried under soil and root, was a mystery. Then, in the early 21st century, a revolutionary technology called LiDAR changed everything. By flying over the region and firing billions of laser pulses towards the ground, researchers were able to create a digital map of the terrain, digitally stripping away the jungle to reveal what lay beneath. The results were staggering, revealing a truth far grander than anyone had ever imagined. Angkor was not just a collection of temples. It was the heart of a sprawling urban landscape, a low-density city that covered an area of up to 1,000 square kilometers. This made it, by far, the largest pre-industrial urban complex on Earth, a megacity whose scale dwarfed that of ancient Rome or Constantinople. The LiDAR scans revealed a vast, geometric grid of canals, roads, dikes, and massive reservoirs known as barrays. This was not a city that simply grew organically. This was a meticulously planned, engineered environment. It was, in effect, a massive hydraulic machine. The conventional explanation is that this complex water management system was designed for agriculture, to control the monsoon rains and support a large population. But the sheer scale and complexity of the system begs the question, was that its only purpose? The perfect geometry, the precise orientation, the sheer volume of Earth moved at all points to a level of technological sophistication that seems to go beyond simple irrigation. Was this a form of planetary engineering? A system designed not just to feed a city, but to control a climate, to harmonize the land with the water, perhaps even to harness some form of energy from the flow and resonance of the water itself? This was a civilization whose defining characteristic was a mastery over water on a scale we can barely comprehend. And it is a chilling irony that their greatest strength may have also been the instrument of their doom. Across the globe, in almost every ancient culture, from the mountains of the Andes to the fertile crescent of Mesopotamia, we find a shared primal story. The story of a great flood. It is in the Epic of Gilgamesh, in the Hindu tales of Manu, in the biblical account of Noah, and in the legends of countless indigenous tribes. These are not just charming fables. Anthropologists and historians have long been struck by the remarkable similarities in these accounts. A warning from the heavens, a chosen few who survive on a vessel, a world washed clean by a global deluge. For so many disparate cultures to independently invent the same detailed story is statistically improbable. A more logical conclusion is that these myths are not inventions, but memories. They are the fragmented, time-worn accounts of a real, global cataclysm that has been seared into the collective consciousness of humanity. Science itself provides a potential culprit for this event. At the end of the last ice age, the planet underwent a period of violent and catastrophic climate change. The melting of the great ice sheets would have unleashed unimaginable volumes of water, leading to a rapid and dramatic rise in sea levels. This is the period of the Younger Dryas, an epoch of intense global instability, where evidence suggests the Earth may have been struck by cometary fragments, triggering worldwide earthquakes, volcanic activity, and continent-spanning floods. This was a time when the world's coastlines were redrawn and entire ecosystems were wiped from existence. Any advanced civilization that existed in that era, particularly one whose cities and power were based near the coasts or in low-lying river basins, would have been utterly annihilated. Is there any physical evidence of such a flood at Angkor itself? The search for it is controversial, but compelling. Look at the base of the temples, at the lowest courses of the sandstone blocks. Some researchers have pointed to signs of deep and extensive water erosion, a distinct pattern of weathering that they argue could not have been caused by millennia of simple rainfall. Instead, it appears consistent with structures that have been submerged under a significant body of turbulent water for a prolonged period. This evidence is strikingly similar to the deep, vertical fissure erosion found on the body of the Great Sphinx and the walls of its enclosure in Egypt. Geologists have argued that such erosion could only be the result of thousands of years of exposure to significant rainfall or flooding, dating the origins of the Sphinx to a time thousands of years before the accepted age of the Egyptian dynasties, a time that aligns perfectly with the end of the last ice age. To find similar patterns of erosion at two of the world's most enigmatic ancient sites suggests they may have shared a common ancient origin and a common watery fate. The possibility that Angkor was part of a much older global civilization is further strengthened when we zoom out from the site itself and view its position on the planet. Angkor Wat does not sit in isolation. It lies on a perfectly straight line that circles the Earth, a great circle that connects it with an astonishing number of other major ancient and sacred sites. Trace this line from Angkor, and you will cross directly over the mysterious plain of Nazca in Peru, the enigmatic statues of Easter Island, the ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley, the Persian ceremonial capital of Persepolis, and, most remarkably, the Giza Plateau in Egypt. The mathematical precision of this alignment is staggering, with the sites deviating from the line by less than 1/10 of a single degree of latitude across thousands of kilometers. To dismiss this as a coincidence is to defy the laws of probability. It is a clear and unambiguous signal of a shared and unified plan. These sites were not the work of isolated, primitive cultures who independently developed advanced construction techniques. They were nodes in a global network, a planetary grid established by a civilization with a profound knowledge of geography, geodesy, and the subtle energies of the Earth itself. They were the heirs of a single, worldwide maritime culture, one that had mapped the globe and established its sacred centers with geometric precision long before the dawn of our own recorded history. Pulling these threads together, a haunting picture begins to emerge. It is the picture of a lost golden age, of a highly sophisticated global civilization that flourished in the epoch before the Great Flood. They were masters of stonework, mathematics, and astronomy. They built a planetary network of sacred sites, aligned with each other and the stars, perhaps as part of a global energy or consciousness grid. Their great Asian center was the sprawling hydraulic city of Angkor, a marvel of environmental engineering, but their world was fragile. It existed at the mercy of the great climatic cycles of the planet. And when that cycle turned, when the ice melted and the waters rose, their world was washed away. The floodwaters that drowned their cities also drowned their history, plunging the survivors into a dark age of chaos and forgetting. What we are left with today are the ghosts of that world. The great monuments like the pyramids and Angkor Wat are the few structures that were massive enough, well-built enough, and perhaps geographically fortunate enough to survive the cataclysm. They are the mountain peaks of a lost, submerged continent of history. They are not the beginning of the story of civilization. They are the end of a previous, forgotten chapter. The Khmer did not build Angkor Wat. They found it, a silent, impossibly ancient city of the gods, half swallowed by the jungle, and they built their own kingdom in its shadow, never fully understanding the true genius of its original creators. If the Khmer Empire did not construct Angkor Wat, their story becomes not lesser, but infinitely more fascinating. They cease to be the architects of stone and instead become the protagonists of a profound human drama, a multi-generational epic of discovery, awe, and ultimate bewilderment. To understand their role, we must imagine the world through their eyes. We must imagine a people migrating through the dense, primordial jungles of Southeast Asia, who one day emerge into a clearing to find the impossible, a city built by gods. Picture that first encounter. They would have seen not the clean, manicured tourist site of today, but a vast, silent complex, already ancient and partially consumed by the jungle. Great stone towers, shaped like lotus buds, would have pierced the canopy. Immense, serene faces would have stared down at them from crumbling walls. They would have walked through galleries adorned with carvings of a complexity and beauty beyond their own artistic traditions, depicting celestial battles and cosmic events. The scale, the perfection, the sheer alien genius of the place would have been utterly overwhelming. In a world of wood and thatch, they had stumbled upon a metropolis of stone that seemed to have descended from the heavens. Their conclusion would have been immediate and inescapable. This was not the work of other men, it was the home of the Devas, the gods themselves. The site instantly would have become the most sacred ground they had ever known, the Axis Mundi, the center of their universe. Their decision to establish their capital here was not a strategic choice. It was a divine summons. Their kings, beginning with Suryavarman II, did not simply rule from Angkor. They became the earthly intermediaries for the divine power that radiated from its stones. They were the stewards of a holy city, whose origins were lost in the mythological dreamtime. This single act of discovery would have shaped the destiny of their entire civilization, defining their religion, their art, their politics, and their very identity for the next 400 years. This perspective, that of the Khmer, as inheritors rather than creators, resolves the profound technological paradoxes we have encountered. Consider again the stark difference in construction quality between the original Angkor Wat and the later temples. This is no longer a mystery of lost knowledge, but a predictable outcome of imitation without understanding. It is a phenomenon we have seen in other contexts, an anthropological pattern sometimes referred to as a cargo cult. When less technologically developed societies encounter a power they cannot comprehend, they often attempt to replicate the external forms of that power in the hope of summoning its essence. The Khmer were, in a sense, the most sophisticated cargo cult in history. They were surrounded by a divine technology, the impossibly precise stonework of their predecessors. They revered it, but they could not replicate it. Their own construction projects were acts of profound religious devotion. They attempted to build new temple mountains like the Bayon in the image of the Great Wat, using the same materials and general designs, but they lacked the esoteric knowledge of quarrying, transport, and masonry that the original builders possessed. They were copying the form, but not the technique. Their work was an echo, a tribute, but it was the work of mortals in a city built by giants. This same logic elegantly explains the anachronistic carvings that so baffle historians. The images of the Stegosaurus, the figure with the telescope, the depiction of the complete solar system, this was not Khmer knowledge. It was the knowledge of the original builders, the legacy of the lost civilization which the Khmer found already etched upon the sacred walls. To them, these were not scientific diagrams or historical records. They were holy images, part of the divine tapestry of the city. As faithful custodians, they would have dutifully preserved these images, and when they added their own carvings or built new structures, they would have copied these sacred motifs, ensuring their continuation without necessarily understanding their original, literal meaning. The so-called Stegosaurus was perhaps, to them, a divine dragon from the time of creation. The celestial diagrams were maps of the heavens left by the gods. They were preserving a message they could no longer fully read. And so, for several centuries, the Khmer Empire flourished within this inherited framework. They managed the vast hydraulic system as best they could, their civilization nourished by the works of a forgotten genius. They added their own stories to the walls, carving their kings and their battles alongside the more ancient and esoteric scenes. They were, for a time, successful stewards. But the machine they had inherited was ancient and complex, and they were living on borrowed time. The eventual abandonment of Angkor, another great mystery of the official history, becomes, in this light, an inevitable conclusion. The conventional explanations for the decline, a series of invasions by the neighboring Siamese kingdom, a societal shift from the complex rituals of Hinduism to the more personal faith of Theravada Buddhism, and prolonged drought and climate change are all valid pieces of the puzzle, but they are symptoms, not the cause. The true cause was the slow, inexorable breakdown of a system the Khmer could no longer maintain. The great hydraulic city was a high-tech machine that required a level of understanding that had been lost for millennia. When the climate shifted and the droughts came, they lacked the original builders' knowledge to adapt the system. The canals silted up, the reservoirs failed. The city built on a mastery of water began to die from a lack of it. The shift to Theravada Buddhism can also be seen as a psychological response to this breakdown. The Deva Raja cult, the worship of the god-king, was intrinsically tied to the magnificent Hindu structures of Angkor. To be a god-king in a failing divine city is a contradiction. The new faith was simpler, more portable, and did not require the immense burden of maintaining a city of the gods. It was a spiritual evolution that allowed the Khmer to gracefully step away from a legacy that had become too heavy to bear. The Siamese invasions were merely the final push that forced a civilization already in decline to relocate. They abandoned Angkor not just because they were defeated in battle, but because they had been defeated by the sheer complexity of their own inheritance. They left the city of the gods to slumber and let the jungle reclaim what it had once surrendered. This chronicle of the inheritors provides the final, missing piece of the puzzle, the reason for the silence. The Khmer never wrote of how Angkor Wat was built because they did not know. The question would have seemed absurd to them. It was not a matter of engineering, it was an act of creation. One does not compose a construction manual for the work of a god. Their own histories are filled with the deeds of their kings, their wars, their politics. But on the single greatest achievement within their kingdom, they are silent, because its story was not theirs to tell. Their role was not that of the architect, but of the guardian. And when the systems failed and the faith shifted, their guardianship came to an end. The story of the Khmer Empire is the profoundly human story of a people who discovered heaven on earth, lived in it for a time, and were ultimately forced to leave it behind. They were not a mystery, but the primary witnesses to a mystery far greater than themselves. And this is where our own story intersects with theirs. We too are now witnesses to this great unfolding mystery. If you feel a connection to this journey of discovery and want to continue exploring the profound questions of our shared past, consider subscribing and enabling notifications so you don't miss the next step. We'd love to hear your perspective on this idea of the Khmer as inheritors. Does it resonate with you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, as every viewpoint adds another valuable piece to our collective understanding. We have traveled a great distance together, not across kilometers of land, but across chasms of time and chasms of belief. Our journey began with a simple, tangible act, a thump on the chest in a silent stone room, producing an impossible sound. That single note of discord was enough to unravel the entire symphony of accepted history. It led us to question the carvings, to decode the celestial alignments, and to see in the very mathematics of the stone a language that was both alien and deeply familiar. We placed the official story in the crucible of scrutiny and found that while it was a fine and well-worn tale, it was too brittle to withstand the heat of its own contradictions. It could not explain the precipitous decline in technology, the crushing economic paradoxes, or the profound, echoing silence in the historical record where a symphony of creation should have been. And so, we looked deeper. We peeled back the layers of the jungle with digital light and found the ghost of a city larger than any we knew. We looked back into the geological record and found the scars of a global cataclysm, a great flood that has haunted the memory of humanity since the dawn of time. We saw in Angkor not an isolated miracle, but a shining node in a planetary network of genius, a system so vast and so ancient it defied our modern notions of prehistory. And we saw in the great Khmer Empire not the original architects, but the awe-struck inheritors, a people who lived for centuries in the shadow of a forgotten god, dutifully copying the miracles they saw on the walls, until the weight of that inheritance became too great and they too faded back into the jungle, leaving the city to its silence once more. We have, in effect, dismantled one story and assembled another. But what is the ultimate meaning of this new narrative? If the theory of a lost, prehistoric civilization is true, it does more than simply rewrite a chapter in a textbook. It forces us to rewrite the entire story of ourselves. The comfortable, linear progression that we have been taught from primitive hunter-gatherer to farmer to industrialist to digital native is revealed as a comforting fiction. It is a story we tell ourselves to reinforce the idea that we, in our modern era, are the pinnacle of human achievement, the smartest, most capable, and most advanced humans who have ever lived. The stones of Angkor laugh at this arrogance. They, along with their silent brethren at Giza, at Tiahuanaco, at Baalbek, stand as irrefutable evidence that we are not the first. They suggest that history is not a straight line of ascent, but a cyclical, perhaps even tragic pattern of rise and fall. They are proof that humanity can achieve a golden age of profound scientific and spiritual understanding, only to lose it all in a cataclysm so complete that it erases almost every trace of its own existence, a process of civilizational amnesia that resets the human experiment back to zero. What survives such a fall? Not the delicate intricacies of science, not the nuanced philosophies, not the vast digital libraries of knowledge. All of that is fragile, ephemeral. What survives is myth. The story of Atlantis, of a great island civilization that sank beneath the waves in a single day and night, ceases to be a mere fable and becomes a plausible, fragmented memory of a real event. The near-universal legends of a great flood cease to be religious allegories and become the collected survivor testimony of a global catastrophe. The stories of gods who descended from the heavens to teach mankind the arts of civilization, agriculture, astronomy, law are transformed from folklore into the dim recollection of the teachings of the last survivors of the previous age. The myths, then, are the garbled, whispered accounts of the last chapter of a forgotten science, and the great megalithic structures like Angkor are the physical evidence that corroborates this testimony. They are the hardware that proves the mythological software was based on a real, functioning operating system. This new history of humanity is both humbling and terrifying. It means that we are a species with amnesia, living amongst the ruins of a past we can no longer comprehend, blind to the true heights of our own potential. But it is more than just a story about the past. It is a profound and urgent warning about our future. Consider our own global civilization. We too have created a world of breathtaking complexity. We have our own planetary grid, the internet, the global financial system, the intricate network of trade and travel that connects us all. We have our own mastery over the environment, our own great cities of glass and steel. We possess a scientific knowledge that allows us to split the atom and read the genetic code of life. We believe ourselves to be the masters of our world, secure in our own permanence. But how secure are we? We too live at the mercy of great planetary cycles. We face the existential threats of climate change, of ecological collapse, of pandemics, of the ever-present shadow of nuclear self-annihilation. We, like the civilization that may have built Angkor, are walking on a razor's edge. The architects of Angkor left their message in stone, the most durable medium they had. We leave our legacy in the most fragile medium imaginable, the fleeting, invisible dance of electrons on magnetic platters. Our entire civilization, our art, our science, our history, our hopes, is stored in a language that requires a constant, uninterrupted supply of electricity to even exist. What would survive a true global catastrophe in our time? What would be left of our world after 1,000 years of darkness, after the rust and the rain and the jungle had had their way? The internet would vanish in an instant. Our books would turn to pulp and dust. Our proudest skyscrapers would be twisted skeletons of steel. What would endure for 10 millennia? Perhaps the granite carvings on Mount Rushmore. Perhaps the massive concrete forms of the Hoover Dam. Future survivors, struggling to rebuild a primitive society, might stumble upon these ruins and draw the same conclusion that the Khmer did. They would conclude that these were not the works of men like themselves, but the works of a forgotten race of giants, or gods. Our own achievements would become the myths and legends of a new dark age. Our science would become their magic. The story would repeat. The cycle would begin again. And so, we are brought to the final, ultimate meaning of this entire journey. The great mystery of Angkor is not, in the end, about the past. It is about the present. It is a mirror held up to our own civilization, reflecting both our genius and our hubris. The serene, silent faces of the Bayon have watched at least 2 civilizations rise and fall around them. They watched the original, brilliant architects create a heaven on earth. They watched the devout Khmer inherit and glorify it. And they watched as the jungle came to reclaim it. They are the silent witnesses to the great cycle of human existence. The stones do not speak of who or when. They speak of what is possible. They are a testament to the heights of creative and spiritual genius that our species can achieve. They are also a silent, solemn monument to the fragility of that achievement. They prove that no matter how advanced, no matter how powerful, No civilization is immune to the forces of nature and the passage of time. They are a message in a bottle, washed ashore from a drowned world, a message intended for us, the next global civilization, to reach a similar peak of power and complexity. The true question that these ancient weathered stones pose to us, as we stand on our own precarious pinnacle of history, is not what happened to them, but what will happen to us. Have we, in our modern world, finally acquired the wisdom to match our technical skill? Have we learned that we are not masters of the planet, but temporary custodians, utterly dependent on a fragile ecological balance? Will we be the generation that finally breaks the cycle of rise and fall, that learns the lessons written in these forgotten stones, and builds a civilization that is truly sustainable, one that can endure for 10,000 years and beyond? Or will our own sprawling cities, our own digital wonders, our own proudest achievements, one day become just another enigma, another layer of mystery for a distant future to uncover, another silent collection of ruins waiting for a new humanity to gaze upon them and wonder what manner of gods could have possibly created such things? The answer to that question is not in the past. It is in the choices we make right now, today. We have journeyed to the edge of accepted history and found it wanting. We have followed the clues etched in stone and sky, and they have led us to the ghost of a forgotten global civilization. We have chronicled the story of their inheritors, the Khmer, a people who lived and worshipped in the shadow of a power they could no longer comprehend. We have reflected on the great cycle of human existence and the sobering warning that Angkor holds for our own time. But our investigation cannot end there. To stop at the philosophical would be to ignore the most radical and perhaps the most important question of all. What if Angkor was not just a message, but a machine? This question forces us to move beyond symbolism and into the realm of function. We have seen that Angkor Wat is a perfect map of the cosmos, a mathematical and astronomical marvel. But what if this was not merely a representation? What if its precise geometry and celestial alignments were not just meant to mirror the heavens, but to actively interact with them? What if the entire complex, every stone, every moat, every tower, was a component in a single massive piece of functional technology? This idea is not without precedent. In recent decades, similar radical theories have been proposed for the Great Pyramid of Giza, suggesting it was not a tomb, but a sophisticated power plant designed to harness and transmit a form of wireless energy. When we apply this technological lens to Angkor, the pieces of the puzzle we have assembled begin to lock into place in a new and startling configuration. The temple ceases to be a static monument and transforms into a dormant, intricate machine. To understand how this machine might have worked, we must reconsider its fundamental components: water, stone, and sound. First, the water. We have marveled at the scale of the hydraulic engineering, the vast reservoirs, or barrays, and the grid of canals that defined the Angkorian landscape. We have assumed its purpose was agricultural or logistical, but in this new model, the water system was the machine's circulatory and regulatory system. The immense, still bodies of water in the barrays, holding hundreds of millions of cubic meters of water, would have acted as massive capacitors capable of holding a charge. Furthermore, the slow, constant movement of water through the canal system could have generated energy through principles of triboelectricity, the same effect that creates static electricity. The entire landscape was a liquid battery, a colossal system for gathering and storing a form of natural energy. Next, the stone. Angkor Wat is built almost entirely of sandstone, a rock composed primarily of quartz crystals. Quartz is a remarkable material, possessing a property known as piezoelectricity. The principle is simple. When quartz crystal is placed under mechanical stress, squeezed, vibrated, or subjected to pressure, it generates a measurable electric charge. This effect is used in countless modern technologies, from the humble cigarette lighter to sophisticated sonar equipment. Now, imagine this principle scaled up to the size of Angkor Wat. Imagine 10 million tons of quartz-rich sandstone constructed with such precision that the entire structure acts as a unified crystalline resonator. This colossal mass is constantly under stress from its own weight and, more importantly, it is constantly being vibrated by the subtle, ever-present seismic hum of the Earth itself. The entire temple, then, could be seen as a colossal piezoelectric generator, converting the natural vibrations of the planet into a steady, powerful form of energy. But how would such a machine be activated? A generator needs an ignition key. This brings us back to the acoustic anomaly we encountered at the very beginning of our journey. The echo chamber in the central tower was not a ritualistic curiosity. It was a critical component of the machine's operating system. This is where the science of cymatics, the study of how sound vibration shapes matter, comes into play. Ancient traditions across the world speak of the power of sound, of sacred words and mantras that could shape reality. What if this was a literal, not a metaphorical truth? The specific resonant frequency produced in that chamber, a sound created by a simple thump on the chest, could have been the precise vibrational frequency needed to activate the entire piezoelectric grid of the temple. The chanting of priests, the striking of gongs, the ritual music, these were not just acts of worship. They were acts of sonic engineering, the deliberate use of vibration to turn the great machine on, to bring its stone heart to life, and cause it to resonate in harmony with the earth. If Angkor was indeed a power plant, what was this energy for? It was likely not electricity in the way we use it today, to power light bulbs and computers. The purpose would have been far more sophisticated and integrated with the natural world. One possibility is that this energy was used to enhance agriculture on an incredible scale. By broadcasting a specific resonant frequency into the soil and water, it might have been possible to stimulate plant growth, increase crop yields, and ensure the fertility of the land. This would explain how the vast Angkorian megacity could support a population of nearly 1 million people in a pre-industrial era. They had perfected a form of technological, energetic farming. A second, more esoteric possibility is that the machine was designed to influence consciousness itself. The energy field generated by the complex might have been tuned to interact with the human mind, creating an environment conducive to heightened states of awareness, profound spiritual experiences, and deep meditative states. The temple would not have been a place you went to talk about the divine. It would have been a place where you went to literally experience it. The priests and initiates within its walls would have been trained to use this technology for healing, for prophecy, and for exploring the furthest reaches of human consciousness. The entire complex was an engine for enlightenment. Finally, connecting back to the global grid of ancient sites, Angkor may have served as a communications and energy node for the entire planet. The energy it generated, tuned to the Earth's own resonant frequency, could have been broadcast through the telluric currents of the planet itself, received by other, similar sites across the world, like Giza or Teotihuacan. This would constitute a form of wireless, instantaneous global communication, a planetary internet of stone. The ley lines were not just symbolic lines on a map. They were the transmission pathways of this ancient energy grid. This functional model also provides a new, stunning explanation for the miles of bas-reliefs that cover the temple walls. If you were a civilization designing a machine to last for tens of thousands of years, a machine intended to survive a global cataclysm, how would you write the instruction manual? You would not write it on paper or papyrus, which would rot away. You would carve it into the most durable medium possible, the very walls of the machine itself. The great bas-reliefs of Angkor, then, are not just art or mythology. They are a form of incorruptible data storage. The famous scene of the churning of the ocean of milk ceases to be a simple creation myth and becomes a complex schematic diagram, a depiction of the opposing polarities and the central vortex required to generate the temple's energy. The thousands of unique Apsara dancers, each with a different posture and hand gesture, or mudra, are no longer mere decoration. They may represent a complex system of information, where each pose encodes a different astronomical alignment, a mathematical formula, or a specific vibrational state, a hard drive of kinetic knowledge. The out-of-place carvings of extinct animals or advanced technologies were critical data points, perhaps a historical record of previous world ages, or a warning about the very cataclysm the builders knew was coming. The entire temple is a library, a user manual, and a historical archive, all in one. Here, then, is the final, breathtaking synthesis of our investigation. Angkor Wat was a dual-purpose legacy machine. It was a functioning energy generator that harnessed the subtle forces of the planet through a perfect marriage of stone, water, and sound. At the same time, it was a time capsule, an indestructible archive containing the accumulated wisdom of a lost golden age. It was designed to endure, to survive the fall of its own civilization and lie dormant for millennia, waiting for a future iteration of humanity to rediscover it, to walk its halls, and to eventually develop the scientific and spiritual maturity to not just read the manual, but to understand it. We, in our modern era, are the first generation with the technological tools to even begin to perceive this possibility. We are the ones who have finally found the key to the library. The ultimate secret of Angkor, therefore, may not be what it was in the distant past, but what it could still become. If Angkor is a machine, a source of profound knowledge and perhaps even clean, free energy, lying in wait for its inheritors, what happens when we finally learn how to turn it back on? We stand at the precipice of a radical new history, a history where a great prehistoric civilization fell, and the Khmer were its inheritors. We have theorized that this lost civilization possessed a profound knowledge of the cosmos and built a machine of stone and water, a legacy for the future. Yet, even this revolutionary idea may not be the final answer. It pushes the mystery one step back, but it does not solve the ultimate paradox. For we are still left with one final, nagging question: where did they get their knowledge? A civilization does not simply spring into existence with a perfect, fully formed understanding of sacred geometry, planetary geodesy, and the harmonic mathematics of the solar system. Knowledge is an evolutionary process. It is built slowly, over thousands of years of trial and error, of painstaking observation, of failed experiments, and incremental breakthroughs. We can trace the slow development of our own science from the first clumsy astronomical observations of ancient Babylon to the elegant equations of modern physics. But when we look for the developmental stage of the civilization that built Angkor and its global counterparts, we find nothing. We find no primitive prototypes, no early, less perfect attempts at megalithic construction. What we find are masterpieces like Angkor and the Great Pyramid, appearing as if from nowhere, their design and execution already at a level of sublime perfection. It is as if the first car ever built was a flawless supercar, with no history of the wheel, the cart, or the steam engine preceding it. This is the ultimate incongruity, the absence of a beginning. This knowledge paradox forces us to consider a possibility that is, for many, the final taboo of historical inquiry. A possibility that lies beyond lost civilizations and terrestrial cataclysms. We must ask, what if the knowledge did not evolve on Earth at all? What if it was an inheritance, not from a forgotten human past, but from a non-human source? To explore this, we must return to the myths. We have viewed them as the fragmented memories of a lost human age. But what if we are to take them at their word? What if their descriptions are literal? Around the world, the stories are astonishingly consistent. The ancient Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, powerful beings who descended from the heavens and taught them the fundamentals of civilization. The ancient Egyptians revered Thoth, the god of wisdom who brought writing and science to their people. In the Americas, the Mayans and Aztecs told of Quetzalcoatl, and the Incas of Viracocha beings who came from the sky, possessed godlike powers, taught the people how to build and farm, and then departed, promising one day to return. For centuries, we have dismissed these stories as primitive attempts to explain the world, personifications of natural forces. But what if they are exactly what they appear to be? Eyewitness accounts. What if our distant ancestors were describing real encounters with an advanced, non-human intelligence, using the only language they possessed? The fiery chariots of the Vedas become spacecraft. The magic of the gods becomes advanced technology. The civilizer gods themselves become extraterrestrial visitors, anthropologists, scientists, or perhaps even gardeners, tending to the nascent intelligence of a young planet. This is the ancient astronaut hypothesis, and when we apply its lens to the story of Angkor, the entire narrative is once again transformed. The Hindu cosmology that underpins its design is filled with cosmic beings: Vishnu, the preserver, who sleeps on the cosmic ocean; Shiva, the destroyer, whose dance creates and destroys universes. We have interpreted these as profound spiritual metaphors. But what if they are also a form of contact history, a theological framework created to understand the reality of beings who could travel between the stars as easily as we cross an ocean? The temple built to honor Vishnu ceases to be a monument to a mythical god and becomes a site dedicated to a literal, biological, starfaring entity, or the force that entity represented. The knowledge to build it was not developed, it was given. The lost civilization was not a native evolution. It was either an extraterrestrial colony, or more likely, a human civilization that was deliberately uplifted, its evolution guided and accelerated by an outside intelligence. This radical idea even finds strange echoes in our own biology. The story of human evolution is not the smooth, gradual curve we might expect. For millions of years, our hominid ancestors were little more than clever apes. Then, in a relatively short span of time, a cognitive explosion occurred. The human brain tripled in size. We developed complex language, abstract thought, art, and music. Anthropologists call it the Great Leap Forward. Furthermore, geneticists have identified anomalies in our own DNA, such as the fusion of our second chromosome, a dramatic event that sets us apart from all other great apes. We are, in many ways, strangers on our own planet, poorly adapted to its gravity and solar radiation compared to other primates, yet possessing an intelligence that seems orders of magnitude beyond what was required for simple survival. Could it be that our own intelligence is not entirely our own? Are we, as some have theorized, a genetically engineered or seeded species? If this were true, it would solve the knowledge paradox completely. The builders of Angkor did not need millennia to discover the sacred constants of the universe, because that knowledge was encoded into their very being. It was an ancestral memory, an inheritance from their cosmic progenitors. Their profound connection to the stars was not a matter of scientific discovery, but of instinct. They were simply remembering their origins. This would make them not just a lost civilization, but humanity's first civilization, a people who lived with a clear understanding of their place in the cosmos, an understanding that has since been lost to us, their amnesiac descendants. And if we accept this final, mind-bending possibility, then the purpose of Angkor Wat must be re-evaluated one last time. It was a machine. It was an archive. But who was its intended audience? If the builders were of the stars, then their legacy was likely intended for the stars as well. Angkor, and the entire planetary grid of which it is a part, can be seen as a galactic marker. Its precise mathematical constants and astronomical alignments are not just a map of our solar system, they are a form of universal address. It is a way of signaling to the cosmos, this planet is alive. It harbors a species that has achieved sentience, a species that understands the fundamental language of the universe: mathematics, physics, and consciousness. The purpose of its indestructibility, was not just to survive a terrestrial cataclysm for the benefit of future humans. It was to serve as a permanent, incorruptible record of the existence of intelligent life on Earth, a record that could survive even the extinction of its creators. It is a black box for planet Earth, a message in a bottle thrown not into a planetary ocean, but into the cosmic one. The information encoded on its walls, the astronomical cycles, the biological warnings, the laws of physics hidden in myth, was a starter kit for any intelligent species, a primer on the nature of this solar system and the story of the life within it. It was built to last for eons, to outlive its makers and its inheritors, to stand as a silent testament to the fact that, at least once, in this small corner of the galaxy, a great intelligence had awakened. And so, our long journey through the mysteries of Angkor brings us to this final, ultimate question, a question that transcends history, archaeology, and even geology. It is a question about our own identity. Who are we? Are we the result of a blind, accidental process of evolution on a lonely planet, the sole intelligent species in an empty cosmos? Or are we part of a much larger, much older, and much grander story? Are we the children of Earth, or are we the children of the stars, an ancient cosmic lineage that has simply forgotten its own name? The answer is not yet ours to know, but the possibility has been planted. The enigmatic, serene faces of Angkor have watched our entire journey. Perhaps their famous subtle smile is not one of enlightened peace, but the quiet, knowing smile of a parent watching a child slowly begin to remember a long-forgotten truth. They have waited patiently through the millennia of our forgetting, as we struggled and fought and slowly rebuilt our world. They wait for us to look up from our terrestrial quarrels and remember our connection to the stars. The great quest to understand Angkor is, in its final analysis, the quest to understand ourselves. And the path to that understanding may not lie in digging deeper into the earth, but in looking farther out into the universe and deeper into the mystery of our own consciousness. The journey is far from over. In truth, it has just begun, questioning the origins of our species and the grand, cyclical nature of history itself. We have theorized that Angkor is a legacy machine, an archive left by a forgotten golden age, perhaps one with roots that stretch beyond this planet. We have asked what would happen if we could reactivate this machine. But in all this, we have been operating under a profound, modern assumption. We have assumed that the technology of our ancestors was, in principle, like our own, a technology of external devices, of physical force, of manipulating the material world. But what if this is a fundamental misinterpretation? What if the greatest technology of the lost civilization was not etched in stone or powered by water, but was encoded within the very fabric of life itself? Our modern world defines technology as that which is outside of us. It is the circuit board, the engine, the silicon chip. We build machines to augment our own limitations. We build computers because our minds are slow. We build vehicles because our bodies are frail. Our entire paradigm is based on overcoming our perceived biological insufficiencies with external tools. But what if the builders of Angkor operated from a completely opposite paradigm? What if their science was focused not on the external, but on the internal? What if they had mastered the most complex and powerful technology in the known universe, human consciousness itself? If this is the case, then Angkor Wat ceases to be a power plant in the way we understand it. It is not a generator of electricity. It is a temple in the truest sense of the word, an instrument for templating or structuring energy. But the energy it was designed to structure was not the coarse energy of electromagnetism, but the subtle, powerful energy of consciousness. The entire complex is not a machine you use. It is a resonant chamber you inhabit, a vast architectural tuning fork designed to elevate the consciousness of those within its field. This idea may sound like mysticism, but it finds startling parallels on the frontiers of our own modern science. Quantum physics has spent the last century dismantling the classical, materialist view of the universe. It has taught us that at the subatomic level, the world is not a collection of solid objects, but a shimmering, interconnected web of probabilities. It has shown us the observer effect, the undeniable fact that the act of conscious observation has a direct impact on the state of physical reality. It has revealed the phenomenon of quantum entanglement, which suggests that all points in space and time may be profoundly and instantaneously connected. The emerging picture is one of a universe that is not a great machine, but a great, conscious, holographic thought. Simultaneously, researchers are beginning to quantify the physical effects of consciousness. We can now measure the complex electromagnetic fields generated by the human heart and brain. We have documented the profound physiological changes that occur during deep meditation, changes in brainwave patterns, heart rate variability, and even genetic expression. Studies on the power of collective intention have suggested that focused, coherent thought from a large group of people can have small but measurable effects on the physical world. What we are rediscovering, in our own clumsy, empirical way, is a truth the ancients may have known in its entirety. Consciousness is not a passive byproduct of brain chemistry. It is an active, energetic force that can interface with and influence the fabric of reality. This is the lost science of Angkor. The builders were masters of a unified physics of consciousness. They understood, with a precision we can barely imagine, how to build structures that could amplify and cohere this force. The specific type of stone, rich in quartz crystal, was not just for durability. It was to create a crystalline matrix that could hold and transduce subtle energy. The vast reservoirs of water were not just for irrigation, they were to create a calming, negatively charged ionic environment and to act as a massive energetic capacitor. The precise geometric forms and mathematical ratios were not just symbolic, they were the architectural equivalent of a mantra, a physical form designed to generate a specific, harmonious, resonant field. The entire city was a piece of spiritual technology, an engine designed to create a paradise of consciousness on Earth, an environment that would naturally promote health, empathy, creativity, and a direct, experiential connection to the divine intelligence of the cosmos. If this is the true nature of Angkor, then the question of how to reactivate it is transformed. The machine is not broken or missing a part. It is simply dormant. It is a perfect, exquisitely tuned musical instrument, waiting in silence for a musician to come and play it. But the musician is not a single person, and the instrument is not played with the hands. The machine of Angkor is powered by coherent, collective human consciousness. The key to turning it on is us. It is not a technical problem for engineers to solve. It is a spiritual and evolutionary challenge for our entire species. The reason the machine lies silent is that we, its potential operators, are broadcasting a chaotic, incoherent signal. Our modern global consciousness is defined by fear, by division, by competition, by a constant mental static of anxiety and distraction. We are out of tune with ourselves, with each other, and with the planet. To bring Angkor back online would require a critical mass of humanity to begin to resonate with a different frequency. It would require us to consciously and collectively cultivate the very states of being that the temple was built to amplify: harmony, compassion, coherence, and unity. The path to reactivating Angkor, then, is the path of inner work. It is the path of the meditator, the healer, the peacemaker. It is the journey of every individual who chooses to quiet their mind, to heal their own trauma, and to live from a place of open-hearted connection. We have been searching for a lost key, a hidden artifact that will unlock the temple's power. But the key is not an object, it is a state of being. We are the key, and the lock is not on a stone door in Cambodia. It is on the door to our own hearts. This realization presents us with a blueprint for a new kind of future, a vision for a civilization that could rise from the ashes of our current, chaotic world. The knowledge encoded at Angkor is not just a history of the past, it is a set of instructions for a possible future. The principles of its design, the perfect balance, the harmony with nature, the focus on spiritual resonance, are the very principles that are so desperately lacking in our own world. We have built a civilization based on the principle of a machine, but we have forgotten the ghost within it. Angkor reminds us that the purpose of technology is not to dominate nature, but to create a resonant field in which consciousness can flourish. This is the path forward. It is not about abandoning our own scientific achievements, but about infusing them with a deeper, more ancient wisdom. It is about building a world where our external technology is consciously designed to support our inner evolution. Imagine our cities built with the principles of sacred geometry, not for religious reasons, but because those forms are proven to create environments that reduce stress and foster well-being. Imagine an information technology that is used not to distract and divide us, but to create global networks of coherent, heart-centered consciousness. Imagine a society whose greatest value is not the accumulation of material wealth, but the depth and quality of its collective conscious experience. This is the world that Angkor dreams of. This is the promise of its legacy. And so, our journey, which has spanned the cosmos and plumbed the depths of time, now arrives at its final destination, you. The epic story of lost civilizations, of celestial alignments, of dormant Earth machines, is not just a story to be passively consumed. It is an invitation. It is a call to awakening. The great amnesia that has plagued humanity is not just a historical phenomenon. It is a personal one. We have all, in our own lives, forgotten the vast, powerful, and divine nature of our true selves. We have all been conditioned to believe that we are small, separate, and powerless. The legacy of Angkor is a direct refutation of that belief. It is a testament to what we are capable of when we are in alignment with the true principles of creation. The final mystery, then, is the mystery of your own potential. The final adventure is the journey of your own inner awakening. You do not need to travel to a jungle temple to begin this work. The temple is within you. The resonant chambers are in your own heart. The celestial alignments are in the very structure of your own consciousness. The choice is not whether to believe this story, but whether to participate in its continuation. Will you be one who contributes to the chaos and the static of the old world? Or will you be one who chooses to cultivate the inner harmony, the coherence, the compassion that is the true activation key for a new age on Earth? The future of our planet, the reawakening of this ancient grid, and the next chapter in the human story do not depend on some grand discovery, but on the simple, powerful, and courageous choice that each of us makes in every moment. The work begins now. The work begins within, through the architecture of the cosmos, and through the very fabric of our own consciousness. We have confronted the silence of the past and the vast, open questions of our origins. We have stood before the abyss of a forgotten world and contemplated the reflections of our own time. We have followed the thread of this great mystery to its ultimate conclusion, that the key to unlocking the secrets of our past lies not in some external discovery, but within the untapped potential of our own being. And now, at the end of this long road, we arrive at the final, most important subject of our inquiry. We arrive at us. For too long, the story of humanity has been a story of fragmentation. We have defined ourselves by our divisions, by our tribes, our nations, our races, our creeds. Our history is a chronicle of conflict, a zero-sum game of competition for scarce resources and competing ideologies. Our science has reinforced this view, teaching us that we are isolated biological machines, governed by selfish genes, living in a random, meaningless universe. Our societies are a reflection of this belief. Sprawling, chaotic systems that isolate us from each other and from the natural world. This is the paradigm that has brought our world to the brink of crisis, a world of profound spiritual hunger amidst unprecedented material abundance. But this story is not the only one we can tell. It is simply the story we have been telling ourselves. And now, a new story is beginning to emerge. We are living in the time of the Great Turning. It is not a revolution that will be televised, for it is not a revolution of armies or politics. It is a quiet, grassroots revolution of consciousness, occurring in the hearts and minds of millions of people across the planet. It is a collective awakening, a remembering of the profound truths that have been encoded in sacred sites like Angkor for millennia. This turning begins with the individual journey inward, the journey we explored in our last chapter. But as more and more individuals begin this work, a powerful collective phenomenon begins to occur. A new coherence begins to build within the human field. Imagine a vast array of tuning forks. If they are all struck randomly, the result is noise, chaos, dissonance. This has been the state of human consciousness for much of our history. But now, imagine that a few of those tuning forks begin, through conscious effort, to vibrate at a clear, harmonious frequency. Through the principle of sympathetic resonance, the tuning forks nearest to them will begin to vibrate at that same frequency. The coherence begins to spread. The chaotic noise begins to subside, replaced by a clear, powerful, unified tone. This is the process of our global awakening. We are, one by one, choosing to tune ourselves to the frequency of harmony, of compassion, of unity. And as we do, we are collectively reactivating the dormant potential of the human grid. What will our world look like when this new, coherent tone becomes the dominant frequency of our planet? It will be a world that is not a mere refinement of our current one, but a phase shift into a new state of being. The principles of harmony, resonance, and interconnectedness, which the ancients encoded into the sacred geometry of Angkor, will become the guiding principles for our entire civilization. Our cities will be transformed. The stressful, angular, concrete jungles of today will give way to a new form of architecture, a living architecture of biomimicry and sacred geometry. Buildings will be designed not just for function, but for their vibrational quality, their ability to create fields of harmony that support the health and well-being of their inhabitants. The division between the urban and the natural will dissolve. Our cities will be woven into the landscape like living ecosystems, with clean energy flowing through them like water, and green spaces functioning as their vibrant, beating hearts. Community, the true casualty of our modern, isolating world, will be reborn. Our social structures will be redesigned to foster connection, collaboration, and mutual support, mirroring the nested, interconnected galleries of the great temple itself. Our technology will undergo an equally profound transformation, for we will have finally outgrown our obsession with a purely materialist science and embraced a unified physics of consciousness. Our technology will cease to be a tool for dominating nature and will instead become a tool for harmonizing with it. The paradigm of extraction and consumption will be replaced by a paradigm of resonance and symbiosis. We will learn to tap into the limitless, clean energy of the universe, not through brute force, but through elegant, resonant systems that work in partnership with the Earth's own energetic field. The field of medicine will be revolutionized. We will move beyond the paradigm of fighting disease with chemicals and scalpels and into the realm of vibrational healing. We will understand that illness is, at its core, a state of dissonance, a loss of coherent harmony within the body's bioenergetic field. Healing will be the art of restoring that harmony, using precisely tuned frequencies of sound, light, and conscious intention. Our hospitals will become temples of resonance, our doctors, masters of the science of life force. And our information technology, the global network that currently so often serves to distract and divide us, will evolve into its true potential. It will become a planetary noosphere, a technological layer that supports and enhances our innate capacity for telepathic, empathic, and collective consciousness. We will learn to think and feel together, not as a homogenized mob, but as a chorus of unique, individual voices contributing to a single, beautiful, harmonious song. We will achieve a state of global coherence, a unified planetary consciousness that can solve problems and create beauty on a scale we can currently only dream of. In this new, resonant world, the human being itself will evolve, nurtured by an environment of harmony, supported by a technology of consciousness, and freed from the perpetual struggle for survival. Our own latent potentials will begin to blossom. Abilities that we now consider rare or supernatural, deep intuition, telepathy, clairvoyance, the ability to heal with conscious intent, will become a natural and accepted part of the human experience. They will be understood not as magic, but as the inherent birthright of a fully awakened species. Our deepest, most primal fear, the fear of death, will be transmuted into understanding. We will have a direct, experiential knowledge of the continuity of consciousness beyond the physical form, and we will see our individual lives not as a brief, terrifying flash of existence, but as a precious and unique journey of a timeless soul. This realization will be the foundation of a true and lasting peace on earth. For when we know ourselves and each other to be immortal, interconnected beings of light, the very concept of conflict becomes an absurdity. We will finally see, with absolute clarity, that we are not separate waves, but a single, unified ocean of consciousness. This is the state of being that the name Angkor has pointed to all along. This is the true meaning of us. With this inner transformation complete, we will be ready for the final step of our journey. We will be ready to close the great cosmic circle. Having achieved a state of planetary harmony, we will look to the stars not with the questions of a lost and lonely child, but with the quiet confidence of a graduate who is ready to take their place in the universe. We will understand that the ancient global grid, the network of temples and pyramids, was not just a legacy of the past, but an invitation to the future. It was a developmental pathway, a planetary cradle designed to nurture a young species until it was mature enough to consciously rejoin its cosmic family. The final act of this new humanity will be to collectively and consciously reactivate this ancient grid, not with a lost technology, but with the power of our own coherent, unified consciousness. And this time, the signal that is sent forth from these resonant structures will be different. It will no longer be a faint, forgotten echo of a past catastrophe. It will be a vibrant, living broadcast, a call sent out from a fully awakened and unified planetary mind. It will be a signal of arrival. It will say to the cosmos, "We remember who we are. We have healed our divisions. We have harmonized our world. We have become one." This is the ultimate promise of Angkor. The entire epic mystery has been a grand puzzle, leading us to this very moment of choice. The final secret of Angkor is not about a lost civilization. It is about the one that is waiting to be born. It is about us. This exploration, this vision, does not end when the screen fades. It is a living, ongoing conversation about the future we can create together. If this journey has resonated with you, and you feel aligned with this mission of collective awakening, we invite you to stay connected with our community. Subscribing is a way of keeping this dialogue alive and ensuring you are part of the journey forward. By enabling notifications, you join a global network of thinkers and dreamers dedicated to building this new, more conscious world. Let us not simply watch the story. Let us be the ones who write its next, most hopeful chapter.